Hi, and welcome to Money Mondays. My name's Cheryl, and I'm the Housing Resource Specialist at the Trenton MFRC. Today on Money Mondays, we are talking about budgeting, and our expert on this subject is Denise, and she's the financial counselor at SISIP. Thanks for coming, Denise.
Thank you very much, Cheryl, for having me. Excuse me. One of my favorite parts of what I do every day is helping military members and their families with budgeting. And it's one of those things that, a topic that a lot of people avoid at all costs. However, I'm going to go through the steps to establishing a budget that will help you become maybe a little bit better with your financial health and your financial freedom.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, Denise. How about we just start right with that? So what are the steps that we should follow to create a budget?
Sure. So there are about, I'm going to go through 6 steps with establishing a budget. And a budget is an eye-opener. It gives you a snapshot of what your financial situation looks like. Creating one and sticking to it, it doesn't have to be painful. And any SISIP financial counselor at any base across the country can help you. So let's get started. I think one of the very important components of anything you do in life, and financial being one of it, is that we need to set goals. Setting goals is very important. So there's no sense in saying, I want to pay off all my debt, I want to do it by tomorrow. That's not realistic. So that's when you're setting goals, you want them to be smart, right? You want them to be realistic. Yeah. And so you want to look at what your goals are short term, and you want to look at medium term, and you want to look at your long term goals. And understanding that they're going to change over time. That as you go through life and you have children or you're posted, that your goals are going to change. And obviously your financial situation is going to change. So keeping those in mind is really important. And distinguishing your needs and your wants, which is really important in the budgeting process. So step number 2 is understanding your income. While that may seem very simple, you may receive the same pay each paycheck, but think about other things that may come into your household financially, such as income tax returns, child tax benefits, GST rebates, interest income. Perhaps there's gifts that you receive on an annual basis, or birthdays, or Christmas. So work those into your budgeting approach as well. However, just be careful not to overestimate your income either. We have a great budget worksheet on our website, SISIP.com, where you can, where we have an electronic version of a budget, and so that's mirrored to the military lifestyle, and is mirrored to the military paychecks as well. So it's a very user-friendly tool that you can use. So understanding your income. Step number 3 is understanding your expenses. And I would say that's probably the biggest mishap that people make when they're going through the budgeting process, is not really understanding their expenses. So you need to make a list. Fixed expenses, we all know what our mortgage or rent is. We all know, generally speaking, what our hydro bill is, what our cell phone bill is. So that's fine. You're going to list those. Then you're going to need to list your variable expenses, like your food and your gas. So variable, they're going to change a little bit here and there. But what you want to really think about, what I would say is one of the biggest mishaps and biggest mistakes that people make, is not thinking about the irregular expenses. Christmas comes and goes. Car repairs are going to happen. You're going to need to buy clothes for yourself and for your children. So those are really important that you not leave those out of your budget when you're doing your budget. Like coffees and subscriptions and gym memberships. Some of them may not happen every month. They may happen only 3 times a year. So you want to look at what you're spending per year and divide by 12. A lot of times when people are listing their expenses, they're guessing. They're guessing how much they spend, especially on dining out. I've learned over the last number of years of being in this role is that people underestimate what they spend on eating out, one of the biggest categories. Also, they underestimate what they spend on gifts and what they spend on clothes. So the best approach to that is what we would suggest is doing a deep dive into your bank accounts, into your credit card accounts, and into if you have lines of credits. And when we say deep dive, start off with 90 days. You don't want this to be too overwhelming. You don't want it to be daunting. You don't want to hate the task.
Right.
You want to enjoy it as much as sometimes that may not be enjoyable. But in order for you to understand your expenses, you are the only person that knows where your money is going.
Yeah.
So doing a deep dive is really important, and that's step number 3. So now we're at step number 4. Now it's time to compare. So does your expenses exceed your income? And if it does, then now's the time to start tackling and cutting what you can. Start with the discretionary expenses, such as the coffees and the teas and perhaps gym memberships that you're not even using.
Yeah.
What can you cut? Okay. And then you want to look at, okay, what else can I do? Can I increase my income? Can I take on a part-time job, or perhaps someone else in the household can start contributing to the monies that are coming into the house? So add an additional income earner. Sell unused items if you're in the negative. Perhaps you don't need the boat anymore. You don't need the trailer. Maybe you need to look at consolidating debts. That's another option that maybe can help with balancing out the budget if it's in the negative. Then we're at step number 5, which is developing a spending plan. So keep track of how much you plan to spend. Then you need to stick to that plan, which can be difficult for sure. But if you have different techniques in place and you have established your goals, then you're more apt to follow it. So if you realize that it differs from what you plan, then if you have the plan, you're better prepared to make modifications. Okay? Step number 6, pay yourself first. Consistent savings can go a long way over the long haul toward establishing a healthy financial egg nest. Financial professionals call this the golden rule of personal finance. So you can set it up that it automatically comes off your paycheck if that's an option through your employer. So you don't have to worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can have it automatically come out of your bank account, which is another, get it out of your account right away before you spend it. Okay? So that's another great way to pay yourself first. Finally, it doesn't stop there. You've established your budget, but it needs to be taken a step further and a step further. And you need to review it on an ongoing basis. Review and adjust. You may not get it right the first time. Not going to be uncommon for that to happen. But reviewing it will provide you with the flexibility required to be successful, as it will change as your life changes and as your goals change. So reviewing and revising, revamping is always going to be an important component of establishing a budget.
Right, exactly. Okay, so now that we've created a budget, then how can we stay on the budget? How can we make sure we're doing that?
So you've gone through all this work of establishing a budget. You want it to work. And so there's lots of tools and techniques out there to stay on budget. So I'll go through some of the ones that I've noticed over in my career. I would say the number one thing is tracking. Tracking, if you can get a system in place, there's all kinds of different ways. It could just be pen and paper. Some people still just like taking a pen and a piece of paper and writing things down. It doesn't have to be cell phones. It doesn't have to be high-tech tools. It can just be pen and paper. Tracking is one of those things that if you get into a good habit of tracking on a regular basis, you will carry that skill with you for the rest of your life.
Right.
You learn to play hockey, you will always know how to play hockey.
Yeah.
You learn to ride a bike, you will always know how to ride a bike.
Yeah.
If you learn to track your expenses, that skill you will take with you for the rest of your life.
Right.
So developing the budget is one step, following through with it is just as important. So for instance, or for example, if you establish your budget, and your budget for your groceries for the month is $800 a month, then every time you spend money at the grocery store, you will want to write it down right away. So as soon as you come home, you would write it in your journal or maybe on your spreadsheet, Excel spreadsheet, and you would say, my budget is $800, I just spent $100, I'm going to write that down. So now I know when I go to the grocery store next week, I have $700 left.
Yeah.
So the tracking is really important. And so the next time, you go to the grocery store, I mentioned that already. Create a budgeting schedule. If you're going to review your budget, at the beginning, you may want to establish a more frequent budgeting schedule. So once a week, I'm going to review my budget.
Oh, okay.
And as time goes on and you're getting really used to it, maybe you only need to do it once a month.
Right.
But at the beginning, when you're really trying to take hold of things, do a regular, set a schedule. Maybe it's every Sunday, or maybe it's every day, whatever's going to work for you. What I think is really important when it comes to budgeting and money management overall is to surround yourselves with others that respect your budget. So there's no sense in setting a budget of, I'm going to spend $100 on eating out every month, but my friends want to go out every day. That's going to be really difficult for you to stay on track. Like-minded people are reminders of your money goals. Okay? Write down your goals. So having pen and paper, again, really important. Write them down so that you can go back and revisit them. We have so much stuff going on day to day that's hard to remember everything. But if you keep your goals visually, vision board, then you will be much more successful. Make it fun and celebrate your successes. Again, a lot of times I have people who come to see me to help them establish a budget. They really don't like it, and they really don't want to do it. So I often would say, you need to celebrate your successes. So if you went through a full month and you didn't dine out, for instance, at the end of the month, celebrate that. You were successful in setting your goal. That doesn't have to be financially attached, though. It doesn't have to have a financial attachment when you celebrate. It could be, wow, like I just did that for this last month. Tonight we're going to make a whole bunch of homemade pizzas. And we're going to have pizza night. We're going to do it at home. And you want to celebrate and enjoy those things. Having an emergency fund is so important. There's always going to be curveballs thrown your way. So having that emergency fund so that you don't throw off your budget. So start off with $1,000, getting to that $1,000. That's just a basic general rule of thumb. But having an emergency fund is really important to stay on budget. Split your goals into smaller ones. Maybe this month you're going to concentrate on the dining out, not dining out as much. Maybe next month I'm going to concentrate on really following my grocery budget, or the next month I'm going to track my expenses, because that's something maybe you have never done before. So that month is going to be your goal. So set them up into little mini ones. Use the cash strategy as another way to stay on budget. So that concept has been around for a very long time. Do you know what I mean by that, Cheryl?
Where you just take a certain amount of money out for certain things, or like you can put them in envelopes even
exactly.
for certain things, and then
you
know what you've got in there. To take with you
to the gas station, to the grocery store. Exactly. So the cash strategy / envelope system has been, like I said, around for a long time, and we spend less when we have cash. We spend more when we're tapping.
Especially because it's a visual thing too. Like you can see what you have left in that envelope.
So if you open up your envelope and you got $20 left over for your dining out. I keep going back to dining out. I apologize. But $20, you're probably more apt not to spend it. Oh, I want to save that, right? Sit on it for 24 hours. Another concept that's been around for a very long time, and maybe set that strategy around. Okay, if I want to make a purchase that's say $100 or more, then I'm going to sit on it for 24 hours. And it's a pretty good chance that you're going to probably not make that purchase 24 hours later. So if you do all of the above, you can react to those one-off situations. So I often get asked, how do I react to those one-off situations that are inevitably going to come up? If you've done all of this, then you will be able to react.
You'll be prepared.
That's right.
Okay. So I guess that kind of leads into the final question here is, what do we do if we fall off track with our budgets, and how do you get back on track?
Very tricky as well, sort of like going on that diet, right? You're going to fall off. It's bound to happen. So we're not going to be perfect at this, so you got to give yourself some slack too. But if you were able to establish some of the techniques of how to stay on budget that I just spoke about, getting back on track will be easy. So if you wrote down your goals, for instance, dig them out. Remind yourself of what your goals are and why you established the budget in the first place. Identify why you fell off. Was it because there was an interruption in family situation? Perhaps there was a medical emergency and you had got diverted away from your day-to-day life. Again, those things are going to happen. So once you identify why you fell off, then it's going to be much easier to get back on track. Once you know that, you just pick up where you left off. My experience has been that when someone falls off track, it's because they weren't realistic a lot of times in the first place.
Right.
Okay? So they gave up. So they may have not wrote down the goals in a very structured format, the SMART goals, right?
Yeah.
Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time-bound, time-sensitive. Those stands for SMART, right? SMART.
Yeah.
Go back and understand what those goals are, and a lot of times people were just not realistic when they established the budget in the first place, so they gave up.
Yeah.
So that's really important as well. Again, do a deep dive into go back to the bank statements again, the credit card statements, and figure out how you fell off. Was it because you spent a whole lot of money on clothes and that wasn't part of your budget? Well, then maybe it's time to scale that back a little bit and maybe put those purchases off for a little while. And really distinguishing needs and wants. Okay, did I really need that? We're going to do that all the time. We're going to buy things that we don't need and we want them. That's really can be really hard to do, but really be diligent in establishing a realistic budget so that you can stay on track.
Okay. I would say, like, I just have a one-off question.
Sure.
If you are trying to build a budget with your spouse or your partner, would it come back to like revisiting the budget more often until you both get into the hang of things?
Yeah.
Because I know that can be tricky for people if they're just starting to budget and they want their partner to be on board with what they're doing. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So maybe just taking a look at it more often together.
Absolutely, and that's really key when it comes to relationships. You know, it's fine. It may be fine if it's just yourself. You're only in control of yourself. But when you have a partner, you have a family. Things are going to start getting a little bit more complicated for sure. But again, it's part of what the strategy was is to have set a budgeting schedule, and that's really important with couples as well. Is that you set that, okay, let's review this once a week. Let's check in. Last week we said that we were going to do this. Did we do that?
Right.
Last week we said we were going to not use our credit card. Hey, hubby, did you not use your credit card? If you did, that wasn't part of the goal. We need to talk about it. Communication is key. You know, no matter if you're talking about relationships, or talking about your work, or talking about, you know, going to the gym. Communicating is so important, and it's no different when it comes to your finances and with couples. So I do see a lot of people that are financially not healthy because the husband and wife are not talking about finances. They're talking about everything else, but they're not talking about finances, what their goals are, and being on the same page.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.